Jackson, your conscious giver in chief. And today we're launching the Conscious Giving Guide. Yay! So lots of celebration, lots of excitement. And we are coming on the hour from noon through 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're coming to you live with our featured conscious givers in the Conscious Givers Giving Guide. Gosh, that's such a tongue twister. So Adrienne Prentice is a co-founder of Mother Nation and is also a very passionate advocate for mothers. So I am so excited to welcome her to our live session. Hi, Adrienne.
Hi, Tysus. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. I know that it's just been such a crazy challenge during COVID, and you have small children. How is that going?
Oh, it's actually, my kids are young enough that whatever it's been, 11 months, they're different people than they were in March. So
oh my gosh.
There's two of them and we keep growing and eating and all the things. But right now, my daughter's about to turn 4 tomorrow. So she's living life. And then my son, Jack, is 18 months. And so they're really fun. It's like high energy. They honestly have been critical in keeping the joy alive for my husband and I, when they are so innocent and giggling and silly, it's hard to not at least embrace that in the moment. So they're good. Everybody's healthy.
Yeah, I love that perspective because that's so great. I always make this little threshold between people who have kids that can read and those who can't read. That's like the first one because those who can't read and they're in school, it's not so easy.
Yeah, that's one barometer. And then frankly, Tysus, can they wipe their own butts or do they need help in the bathroom?
Ooh, because you're doing it every single day, all day long. Jack may get a quick potty training.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it would make life, might make life just a tad bit easier. So.
Cleaner. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I am so happy that you were featured in the Giving Guide. And so today I just want to talk to you a little bit more about your experience being the giver, your background, and also your featured organization plus. So, I know that family has such an interesting part. People sort of have always talk about the way that, something in their upbringing or there was someone along the way that really impacted the way that they give as an adult. What do you have that one person, or perhaps it was even like an institution? And it can be multiple. It doesn't just have to be one because sometimes we shift along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that honestly, I wasn't aware of growing up the cash donations that my parents made to particular organizations, so they didn't have a ton of disposable, and I'm sure they did, but there wasn't just that knowledge. However, my mom herself started her own nonprofit.
Wow.
So I'm going to go way back for a second. We have a few minutes, right?
Yeah, we have time.
So when my mom was 17, before she even met my father, she got into a motorcycle accident, which was pretty bad. And she ended up in the ICU. And one of the lasting effects was that she broke her larynx. So she, only whispers. She only had she doesn't have the tone of voice that you and I have. And when she was in the ICU, she so appreciated and loved her respiratory therapist. So she went on to become a respiratory therapist. And later, based on her experience there, she treated a lot of people with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is typically, I don't know the stats, right? But it's caused by smoking. So a lot of these people have this lung disease based on, habits that they had. And then they feel guilt and they feel like they don't deserve, the treatment or the attention or anything. When you look at the cause of death, COPD is way up there, but the resources that our government and it's not aligned to that. So she started this nonprofit called the Pulmonary Paper, and it was a newsletter that is a monthly newsletter, actual snail mail newsletter. that goes to these, COPD patients to just like give them tips and tricks about how to improve their daily life, how to still enjoy life and, cope COPE with COPD. And so I grew up folding newsletters and sticking labels, going to the post office.
The big fun, the fun part.
Yeah, we would get pizza and 4 blockbuster movies, and it really, it was fun. So I think in that sense, it was actually her organization that she was passionate about, and she just until this year, so it was over 30 years that she ran it. So I think that was a great example of just like this sort of supporting people who might feel like they don't deserve it, or whatever it might be, like being a voice for others. And that's a value that honestly, like just while we're talking, kind of.
Yeah. Because it's also I know it's like really funny because when you were talking, it made me think about my mother was recording secretary for 3 organizations, and so no one, like just being a recording secretary for one organization is a lot, but she was recording secretary for our county city NAACP. She was the recording secretary for her union at her job, and then for their regional PAC, for the union's regional PAC, she was the recording secretary. So, and they all met regularly, and I was her assistant recording secretary. I can write some mean notes.
Yeah, that's super fast, right?
And I'm just old enough that we didn't quite have computers. I hate to tell on myself, because even now I'm like, we didn't have computers? Like, what?
Yeah.
But literally, like, we didn't have computer. We had like a word processor, and that's how, and it was actually not a typewriter. It was, very advanced. You could go back and delete stuff. So it was, but it was a word processor, and that's how we had to do the minutes. And she would just get them all together and be like, here, do it. And it's amazing because when you're doing that process, like you're folding, you're reading it and you're understanding, you're seeing the compassion, you're learning like the process of so many things and the hard work behind it. So I knew what was going on in all 3 of those organizations because I was looking at her notes, every single thing she wrote. So it's amazing. Like, it's a great impact. That was so nice. So This is interesting, because your mom started a nonprofit, and now you have, you're a social impact leader and the co-founder of Mother Nation. So tell me more, because now I'm like, as soon as that was the other part, I was like, I see how Mother Nation was formed. So tell us about Mother Nation and how, you were pushed forward to start to do this work and conceptualize a new organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, so I'll start. Mother Nation is a community and coaching platform where we focus exclusively on improving maternal well-being. And it was definitely rooted in my own experience becoming a mother. And like, what was an aha moment for me, which maybe shouldn't have been, was that my definition of motherhood was defined by my own mother. So even going back to her, like, obviously, like, what I think of what mother means comes from her nonprofit focus. Everything kind of is all combined together. But essentially what we do at Mother Nation is we gather small groups of up to 8 moms together based on where they live, the age of their children, and then a shared experience, which can vary based on whatever that mother's life looks like, right? So it could be a mom wanting to connect and be in community with other moms of multiples, or moms with special needs children, or moms of color, whatever it might be. And we gather them up. They meet monthly for 2 hours after they go through our, what we call empathic listening training, so that we can really ensure and design that there is a safe space for mothers to connect and provide community care to each other. Now that linking back to my mom's work in the pulmonary paper is just this idea of social support. Like, we all have our own challenges, right? Like, motherhood does not look the same for anybody. And while we think there are definitely universal experiences in it that we can be together, it looks different for everyone. So having that recognition and embracing that, and then having, micro communities where you can get real on the tactical stuff as well as the emotional support is where we like to live and try to balance. So with my mom, that was like, hey, our tactical questions these days are like, what are some quick and easy recipes we can cook tonight? Because I'm so tired of cooking 3 meals a day for my entire family, right? And it's like, but my mom's groups, it was, what oxygen tank is the most mobile? This mine's too heavy, right? And then also the emotional support of them not, the COPD patients not being able to be as active as they want to be, and moms feeling like they can't, quote unquote, be as ambitious in their careers as they want to be, and how you can just like hold that space for each other. I think there's a ton of parallels, which frankly, honestly, Tyson, I've never even made these connections into this conversation. So I'm so grateful for you, like,
and I keep doing. You're like, oh wow, it's really amazing how that happens in our lives. So
yeah. So thank you.
Oh yeah, it's so I'm so intrigued by this because I can totally see this part, because my sister her and her husband adopted my nieces, and one of the first things she did was to like find other mothers in parents in the United States who had adopted children from Ghana. And so she comes back and she tells me like this story, or she's like, yeah, when I come visit you, I have a new friend in Woodbridge that I want to go visit. And I'm just like, nice. I'm like, okay, we have to plan the day for you to go and do that. But but it really like made her happy. And even some little things that when the girls first arrived, that she had learned it from this Facebook groups and meeting other parents. So I could see how that could be so impactful. So what are some of the things that you're hearing from the mothers about Mother Nation, and like right away that what's happening with COVID? Because I feel like while you have a feature organization, there's like so much that you're doing right now that is really impacting so many lives for so many mothers.
Yeah. So we call it our Make Change Partners. So we have our Mother Nation values. There's 5 of them embedded within what we call our Declaration of Interdependence. And Make Change is one of our values. So we designate an organization every year that we allocate a portion of our proceeds to, and then and get involved in other ways, rather other than just the cash. So for this year, it's called Plus. It's paid leave in the U.S., and they were our partner in January. Their sole mission is to achieve paid leave for every American by 2022. And I think what's really important, and I always want to emphasize, is we are interested in parental leave, but they are fighting for leave for all caregivers. So if someone is sick in your family, if you're, the sandwich generation is getting bigger and bigger as moms are caring for their children and dads, as well as their parents. So they want to get reasonable paid family leave for mandated. So what we do with them is, in addition to like the allocation of some of our proceeds, is writing letters to Congress people. They have a huge advocate arm. And what we learned, and this was really interesting because obviously the pandemic and the childcare crisis has heightened the need for paid family leave in the US. We are the only developed country without it. And so moms, you asked like what moms, how they reacted, like literally were like banging down our doors being like, what can we do about this? Like,
oh my gosh,
this is nonsense. 865,000 women were forced out of their jobs in September alone. And so moms are frustrated. They're feeling stuck.
Wait, can I stop for a second? Say that number again so that like we can hear it, because that's a number we need to know.
865,000 women in September 2020 alone. And that number is frankly probably underreported. And the logical explanation is it's when school went back, right? So there's no school, and you can't be a teacher and insert here whatever your title is at work at the same time. And there's not enough systemic support. And so moms bear the brunt of having to do both. So it's a bad situation, obviously, which is disproportionately impacting women of color, moms of color. So I think there's like, at Mother Nation, we try to focus a lot on like how we can act individually and act with agency to define motherhood and what looks like for us. And so that might mean having some hard conversations with your boss. But what it comes down to is that we need government support and we need employer support to fix what is happening, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why we love partnering with Plus, because we can nudge moms and be there for them in these hard situations and try to encourage them to act with more intention. And, you know, they're worth it, like at a minimum. But Plus is pounding the pavement, like knocking on the doors on Capitol Hill to get the bigger, more macro changes that we need. So what happened back in March is moms being like, you know, what do we do? And it was really great to be able to say, actually, Plus just called us. They're going to file some sort of brief with the appropriate committee that has a family leave bill in front of them. And they said that narratives from real people are very powerful. So they can give you all the data that, you know, they did a great report that recommended 6 months paid leave for mothers. And they can give the data from the scientists in the, you know, the Georgetown Center that they collaborated with. But when they can say what leave would have meant to this individual family, it just makes the story, you know, like more compelling. So we were able to help them by collecting stories that they compiled into the report and then took it to the right people.
That's amazing. Part of my work, I run a small nonprofit, is a lot of advocacy. So probably for the last decade, I've been doing work in the advocacy space, and it's really interesting that people just downplay their voice in the United States, and they don't realize the impact that they have. And that's been what's, I kind of think, what's been sort of empowering about this last election cycle, is that there were some new voices and people who really started to engage and say, you know what, it's not just for me voting. And I feel like this is going to come up a lot, but I feel like, you know, like the Gen Z generation, like, you know, the late millennials, the tail end of millennials, they are like no holds bar. Like,
you're gonna save us, Tysus. I'm like, I'm putting pressure on them.
Why are these people?
Please.
I think like either I was like, I could have potentially had one of in that generation, but it's so amazing. I've even like my nieces are really young, but last year I tried to get them to volunteer, and there was just something in them that just sort of sprouted out. They were, you know, when they started doing it, and this year they were so sad because they were like, well, this is what we do on Thanksgiving now. So they live in Georgia, and so I promised them for Christmas as a family, because right, you can't really go out and like volunteer like you used to. So we're gonna do visibilities. We're gonna go to like the corner of a busy highway. I told my mom I was gonna park her a little chair. Let's see if she does it. Park her a little chair. She can sit down, and we're gonna like have signs for Warnock and Ossoff, and we're just gonna be on the corner. But I just really want, like, I just saw them blossom so much. I just think that there's something that's so different with this generation, and they just really found their voice in this one experience of, you know, helping the homeless. So then like we did that for Thanksgiving. So then Christmas, we found some other way to like package up really cute things. Like, it was amazing. And, you know, and I didn't even have to prompt them about it. They get lazy on a lot of things, but they were like, I guess we're not volunteering since you're not coming. I was like, oh my gosh.
Let me tell you, so two things. One, you cannot discount the influence that you have had on them, right? Like, you set them up with that first activity to give them, you're a model, like you're setting the standard for them. So they're great. I love that generation. I'm sure your nieces are fabulous, but you are fantastic too.
Thank you.
the other thing that you said reminded me. So we just hosted an event called Anti-Racist Parenting with Dr. Tracy Baxley, and she's amazing. Her website is called Social Justice Parenting. But one thing she said that has just been ringing in my ear since was mothering is a form of activism. You can start small in being an activist in the change by how you speak to your children, the experiences that you expose them to, the books that you buy, the toys, all of that. And I think the same is true for anteing. Anteing, being an aunt is a form of activism, Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they are like a little pleasure. I'm literally trying to think how I'm going to drive down to visit them without stopping. I'm like, I don't think it's possible, but I'm going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out because I will be there for the holidays. And so it's important. And also we have to do our corner. We got to be out there with our signs in the corner.
Yeah.
I'm so hyped about that. Let me just tell you. And it's not cold. They're in southern Georgia, so it's not cold. So it's going to be perfect weather to be outside.
That's great.
So, I think that like it's so neat because when I think about like conscious giving and I talk about it as being very intentional for impact, and even without asking that question, you talked about it through the organization and sort of like your life's work now to be able to with your partnership with Plus. So as you talk about that, like what prompted you? So your organization, you're not a nonprofit. So tell me like what, like your background, and then how did you say, you know what, we are definitely going to incorporate that? Because essentially you're a startup and there's not, the proceeds are usually, might be negative sometimes. So like, what was that commitment level? Because that's like that conscious giving commitment that we are going to be intentional, like built all the way through Mother Nation and your partnership with Plus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that. It was a journey, actually. I'm gonna, through this story, make a plug for another one of my favorite nonprofits local to DC. But I think it was just really important to me and my co-founder that there is something like bigger, right? Like yeah, moms need each other. We're gonna help moms, but what moms need is like so much bigger than what we can provide. So somehow aligning with an organization that can help us achieve that. So that's what we kind of found in Plus.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you, Kate and I, my co-founder, are both ambassadors for the Greater DC Diaper Bank.
Great organization.
Like fantastic. Corinne Cannon is the founder. They were so impressive with the responsiveness to the pandemic. They created these new diaper hubs around the area. The partnerships that they have with so many community organizations is so solid and productive. So we said, okay, we absolutely want to have a partner and like in a nonprofit partner that we can work together with. And our gut was to go with the Diaper Bank because that's the organization we were already involved with. And they have, honestly, like they have volunteer hours. I've taken my kids there before. Every time we go and drop off the diapers, I explain to my daughter what we're doing. Like, could you imagine if Jack didn't have diapers and what that would be like? So like, we just love everything about it. So that was actually our initial thinking, is that they would be our partner. But when we thought that we wanted to do is like flip the script on how mothers are treated and the cultural stereotype of mothers and mom guilt and, mom never gets, puts herself last, everything, we thought Greater DC Diaper Bank is amazing, right? But they don't quite align to that. And so that's when we started looking at advocacy organizations. So that was like the kind of conscious, intentional part, is when you are picking who you want to spend your time on, like how you want to support which nonprofit. Like there's so many options and so many organizations doing amazing work, but it does come to like what fit the Mother Nation values. And it's not to say Greater DC Diaper Bank doesn't, obviously.
Yeah.
but it was this kind of like
Mm-hmm.
when we were introduced to Plus, it was like kismet.
Yeah, and even like when you explained, your 5 principles, it definitely all really lined up. And so even as I go through this process and think about the giving guide, and as we grow it, it really is all built in being intentional. And that's the hard part. The back end is like the easy part, but because there's just so many wonderful people, but it's just a very upfront and being um intentional about it, about who's here and why they're here. So I never have to worry about this is my second year, and each and every organization someone chooses, I know I would support that organization. Their mission is so valuable. And even like there's always like these new organizations that's introduced. I'm like, I'm so happy. These are ones I always know. I know. So it's great to learn about Plus. And I think that oftentimes people don't think about advocacy organizations and the value that they hold, because they don't have like this tangible outcome. Because if you think, I'm sure with Plus, they've been at this for years and their goal is 2022. But you take a certain administration, you get a certain elected officials, Supreme Courts, a lot of groups in that could derail that whole process. And, DC is one of the few areas that just passed paid family leave. And, it's talking about you lived through it. And some elected officials didn't make it through it. But I, just because of the work that I do, it was up until like it was being enacted. We were like, is it really going to happen? Oh wow, okay, it's July 1st. It's happening. It's happening. It was amazing. And there are critical times in our lives that what we remember. Like I remember voting and going to the voting booth with my mom. She wanted to take me in so that I could watch her vote. And then I remember the Family Leave Act in the 90s under the Clinton administration. And while it really, that's why we're still here, because we're still fighting. It's not perfect, but I remember a monumental piece that was, and I remember the shift in like my mother being able to care for her brother who was dying of cancer, and like our whole family just becoming closer after that, because that was just like such an amazing time period. She was like, I got to spend, I got to talk to my baby brother like every day and be with him and like take care of him. Like those are like just these amazing lasting memories. And I definitely think that parents should have the opportunity to do that with their child. And particularly, we know that those first 3 years are extremely important. So we got to get it together.
Absolutely. And one thing like that I love about Plus, because back to the advocacy, sometimes it can feel icky, like, oh, I'm going to donate to like a lobbying group or whatever. The thing about them is they are completely inclusive. It's not just parents. Like I said, it's caregivers, it's moms, it's dads, it's all Americans by 2022. And so I just feel like that is also aligned to the Mother Nation values. And kudos, again, I totally agree about the DC paid leave, but there's lots of loopholes in that in terms of like the size of the employer. And so the federal mandate that Plus is working on would close a lot of those loopholes. Do you know? So
yeah.
Progress.
And it's hard because while oftentimes with legislation, sometimes there are like localities or states that can kind of push forward to help for something to be standardized nationally. If you look at Massachusetts with healthcare, so it's a lot of different pieces, but it always gets better when you can reach across nationally. Like it can, it always just sort of shores things up, because it's a really heavy burden for such a huge topic for a local place to just take on. So I'm so happy that there's organizations like Plus that are leading those efforts, and then also with Mother Nation, giving mothers the opportunities to tell their stories. And that's the part that we always forget about advocacy. It's just the opportunity to tell your story, because each and every one of us matter. And we have to remember that we are worthy and our experiences need to be heard. So, oh my gosh, Adrienne, this has been amazing. I so much enjoyed the time. I love how intentional you are, and I totally see the impact that Mother Nation is making. So if people want to follow Mother Nation, follow you, and to learn more about what's happening, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.mothernation.com. And on Instagram, we are @_Mother Nation. So
Okay.
come on.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you. So this is, we're just afternoon. We're just like the second interview in, and we are having so much fun. There is so much to learn about conscious giving. And don't forget to look Adrienne up in the Conscious Giving Guide. You can find it at the website of consciousgivingguide.org. Or excuse me, I'm forgetting. There's no consciousgivingguide.org. I'm sorry. It's consciousgivingfun.org. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at co-giving fun. And you will see Mother Nation tagged also in on our social media, so you can find Mother Nation there. So again, Adrienne, thank you, and it's been a great day. We have a long way to go, but I'm telling you, we leveled up from the very beginning, and we are like totally still staying there and totally just keep rising. So definitely, if you have some questions, feel free to join and to join live so you can ask these questions. Thanks. Have a good day.